The happiest day of her life became the cruelest moment anyone in that garden would ever witness. Hundreds of guests sat frozen as the music faded into an unbearable silence. The groom never appeared. Every second felt heavier than the last until someone quietly whispered the words nobody wanted to hear. He wasn't coming. The bride stood alone beneath the flower-covered arch, her white dress glowing in the afternoon sun while her heart shattered in front of everyone she loved. Tears streamed down her face as hope disappeared from her eyes, and in that heartbreaking moment, I realized that sometimes love doesn't arrive with perfect timing, it arrives when someone refuses to let another human being fall alone. Before we continue this unforgettable story, if you believe kindness, second chances, and unconditional friendship can change someone's life forever, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, leave a comment, and subscribe to Your support helps us bring more emotional stories that remind the world that compassion still exists. I had known Emma for almost 20 years. We met on the first day of elementary school when she offered half of her peanut butter sandwich to a lonely boy sitting by himself during lunch. That boy was me. We grew up together through scraped knees, school dances, family vacations, heartbreaks, graduations, and countless dreams about what adulthood would look like. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, volunteered on weekends, visited elderly neighbors, and somehow always made everyone around her feel important. She believed love was the strongest force in the world because kindness had always guided her life. When she met Daniel 5 years earlier, everyone believed she had finally found the person who deserved her heart. Their relationship looked perfect from the outside. Daniel was successful, charming, and confident. He always knew the right words to impress people, and Emma believed every promise he made. Yet over time I noticed tiny cracks that nobody else seemed to see. He often canceled plans at the last minute. He rarely supported her dreams unless they benefited him. Whenever Emma apologized for things that were never her fault, something inside me became uncomfortable. Still, every time I tried to gently ask if she was truly happy, she smiled and insisted everything was fine. I wanted to believe her because friendship sometimes means respecting another person's choices even when your instincts quietly disagree. The wedding preparations lasted nearly a year. Emma planned every detail herself, carefully choosing flowers that reminded her of her late grandmother, writing handwritten thank you notes for every guest, and spending countless evenings making decorations with family and friends. She wanted everyone attending to feel loved. Watching her excitement made it impossible not to smile. I stood beside her as best man, proud to support my lifelong friend on what we all believed would become the happiest chapter of her life. The ceremony began beneath a bright summer sky overlooking a peaceful lake. Soft music filled the air as Emma slowly walked down the aisle, glowing with nervous excitement. Every guest stood with tears in their eyes. But when she reached the altar, Daniel wasn't there. At first everyone assumed there had been a small delay. Minutes passed. His phone went unanswered. His family exchanged worried glances. Finally his best man approached the wedding planner with a pale face before quietly speaking to Emma's father. The expression on his face told the entire story before a single word was spoken. Daniel had left. There was no emergency. No accident. No misunderstanding. He had simply sent a short message saying he couldn't go through with the wedding and had already boarded a flight to another city. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Emma tried to stay strong, but the weight of public humiliation crushed her. Every flower she had arranged suddenly felt meaningless. Every promise she had believed disappeared like smoke. She looked around at hundreds of sympathetic faces before collapsing onto her knees, overwhelmed by grief that no one could possibly prepare for. People rushed toward her, unsure how to help. Some cried openly. Others looked away because the pain was too difficult to witness. Parents held their children close. Elderly couples quietly wiped away tears as they remembered their own wedding days. Nobody knew what to do. I stood completely still. All I could think about was the little girl who had shared half her sandwich with a stranger because she couldn't bear to see someone lonely. She had spent her entire life protecting other people's hearts. Now no one seemed able to protect hers. Without planning it, I found myself walking toward the altar. Every step felt impossible, yet somehow completely natural. My hands shook as I approached her. She looked up through tears, confused by why I was standing there instead of helping comfort the guests. I gently knelt beside her. In front of everyone, I asked the question that changed both our lives forever. Would you marry me? The entire garden froze. People gasped. Some believed I had completely lost my mind. Others stared in disbelief. But my question wasn't born from pity. It wasn't about rescuing a broken bride or replacing another man. It came from years of realizing something I had hidden even from myself. Somewhere between childhood adventures and adult responsibilities, friendship had quietly become love. I had simply convinced myself that her happiness mattered more than my feelings. Watching another man abandon her at the altar forced me to confront a truth I could no longer ignore. Emma stared at me for what felt like forever. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she cried even harder. Not because she suddenly fell in love with me in that instant, but because someone had stepped toward her when everyone expected her life to end. She wrapped her arms around me as the entire audience remained silent. Then, through tears, she whispered that she couldn't promise forever that day because her heart was broken beyond words. But she thanked me for reminding her she was still worthy of being chosen. Those words alone changed everything. We didn't get married that afternoon. Instead, we invited every guest to stay for the reception anyway. The musicians played. Children laughed. Families danced. The expensive food was shared. Instead of celebrating a wedding, everyone celebrated resilience. What could have become the worst day of Emma's life slowly transformed into a reminder that community can carry people through unimaginable pain. Over the following months, healing came slowly. Emma entered therapy. She surrounded herself with family, friends, and people who genuinely cared about her well-being. She stopped blaming herself for someone else's cowardice. She rediscovered hobbies she had abandoned. She traveled. She volunteered again. Little by little, her smile returned, not because she forgot the heartbreak, but because she refused to let it define her future. Our friendship became even stronger. There were no dramatic confessions or fairy tale moments. There was simply consistency. Morning coffee after difficult days. Late-night phone calls during moments of doubt. Hospital visits when her father became ill. Celebrating small victories. Being present without expecting anything in return. Eventually she admitted something that surprised both of us. She said she had spent years searching for grand romantic gestures while overlooking the quiet love that had been standing beside her all along. Nearly 2 years after that unforgettable wedding day, I invited Emma back to the same lakeside garden. This time there were no crowds. No expensive decorations. No impossible expectations. Only 2 families, a few lifelong friends, and the peaceful sound of water moving gently against the shore. When I asked her to marry me again, it wasn't because I wanted to erase the past. It was because together we had survived it. This time she smiled,